Guys, so welcome to Bluetech Empire Python tutorials. In this tutorials, we are going to be looking at the if and the if else statements. So these are all branching constructs which you can use to choose between code executions. You can have a portion of code you want to execute if a particular condition is met, and another to execute if that condition is not actually met. So we are going to start with the if statement, and I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how you can use it to program. So as you can see here, the if statement actually starts with, you have a piece of code, you see this is the start position, then you have what we call a Boolean expression. I'm going to show you guys what the Boolean expression is, but remember from the videos on identity operators, membership operators, and comparison operators, we actually saw Boolean expression. A Boolean expression is a Python expression that will either return true or false. After the expression, the return value of such an expression is true or false. For example, we have 2 greater than 3 is false, 3 less than 5 is true. So now we have these are the different parts of a an if statement. We have the Boolean expression, and now if the if statement actually checks the Boolean expression. If the Boolean expression here is true, the if code will be executed. The if code can be a single line of code or multiple lines of code. It can be a single line of code. We also call it a block of code or a code suite when it's multiple lines of code, or a block of code for multiple lines. Now, if the Boolean expression is true, the if code is executed. If the Boolean expression is false, the rest of the code is executed. That's the code below the if code. I'm going to be showing you guys an example right now. So I just want you guys to see the general flow diagram of an if statement. This is normally known as flow diagram. It shows the flow of an if statement. So an if statement has 3 parts, actually like 2 or 3. Yeah, we have a Boolean expression, and if the Boolean expression is true, we have the if code to be executed. And once the if code is executed, the rest of the code will be executed. But if the Boolean expression is false, the if code will be skipped and the rest of the code will be executed. All right, so here is an example. I'm using the Eclipse editor. You can actually watch our video on installing the Eclipse editor if you like to use this editor. You can also use Visual Studio Code, but right now I'm using the Eclipse editor so that I can actually see the output adjacent to the code. So here we have a piece of code, and here we're going to be using the if statement. Now I want to show you we have several variables. Here we have a list, a tuple, a dictionary, a set, a variable called a variable b, a variable c, a variable f, g, h, variable 1, but 2. You can see this an integer, float, this is a list, this is a complex, this is a string, here is a Boolean, and here is a string. If you don't understand these data types, you can watch our videos on data types. Now we have a list here, we have a tuple, we have a dictionary, and here we have a set. All right, now we have a variable called a. We assign it to an object with the value 10. We have a variable called b. We assign it to an object with the value 20. Now we check. Here is the part of an if statement I was telling you about. Here we have the condition expression. Here is the conditional expression. It's actually a Boolean expression. It will either return true or false. For example, in this case, we have a greater than b. Now a is 10, b is 20. So a greater than b will return false, which means the body of the if statement, which is these 3 statements, will be skipped and execution will continue from line 19. Now let me execute this code so we can see actually what's going to be happening. All right. Okay, I'll save it. Now, all right, so we see the first statement normally is executed, of course, because here statements are executed one line is executed after the other. So here is the this statement actually prints out the string first statement. Here is the output. We see first statement, and we can see now we have the if and the condition expression. Now the condition expression can either evaluate to true or false. I'm going to show you what happens. For example, let's say a equals to 20 and b equals to 40. Now let's check a greater than b. You see it returns false. Okay, that's so it means this in this case too, we have a is 10 and b is 20. A is not greater than b, so the result of this expression is going to be false. And what we're going to have here is if false. Since we have false here from the flowchart I showed you, the body of the if statement, which is the if code, will be skipped, and execution will continue from this line. Now, here is the output, so you see exactly what's happening. Now, you see the first statement is printed as normal. Now, these three statements are skipped because the if condition will be evaluated to false. So in this case now, execution continues from line 19, which is statement 5, and line 20, which is goodbye, which prints out goodbye. Now let's say we had a greater than, let's say, 5. Of course, a is greater than 5. So let's see what happens now. I'm going to save and run. All right, now in this case, you see the if condition will execute to true. Of course, we know a is 10, and let's check it here. Let's say a equals to 10. Let's say a greater than 5, and let me show you. See, returns true. You can see true here. So automatically it indicates this a greater than b is going to return true. So once you return true, the if code is going to be executed. Remember, from the previous example, the if code was skipped. In this time, the if code is going to be executed, and what's going to happen is after this execution, you see, it prints out statement 2, statement 3. As you can see from the output here, it prints out statement 2, statement 3, statement 4, and then execution normally continues from statement 5, and the last statement, which is goodbye. So here is the general description of the if statement. Like I showed you, it actually has a conditional expression. Here is the conditional expression. Remember, it can be any, we can have any kind of conditional expression. For example, we can say, let's say c equals to 20. You can check if c is 30.5, c equals to 20 is going to give us 4. So this if code is going to be skipped. Let's try it. Control S, and let's run it now. You see, all right, you see the if statement was skipped. Now let's say c equals to 30.5. Let's see, c equals to 30.5. Let's see, you know this is going to be true because yes, c is equals to 30.5, so this is going to execute to true. And let's see what's going to happen if you run it. We execute. All right, you see, this statement evaluated to true, so the body of the if statement or the if code will be executed, and execution will continue from here. So this is basically what how the if statement operates. Now we talked about identity operator, membership operator. Now let's look at a membership operator. Like we explained in the previous videos, a membership operator is actually, it checks if a particular value is within a list, tuple, dictionary, set, or even a string. For example, if we have str1 equals to hello. All right, we can have a string. All right, so let's say, let's cancel this because we already have a string. So now let's check. Remember, if we have let me show you how, for those if you have forgotten, let me show you how the membership operators work. For example, let's say we have a list l equals to, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, if we want to check if 2 is in the list, we just say 2 in L. You see, it returns true. What of 40 in L? You see, it returns false. If you don't understand, you can watch our video on membership operator, or the video on lists, introduction to lists. For now, I'm going to continue. So in this case now, you can see. All right, so let's check. So let's say 3.5 in list 1, which is true. 3.5 in list 1. If 3.5 in list 1, what should happen? Let's check. This will be true. So 3.5 is in list 1, of course. This will be true. So we expect this the if code to be executed. This three statements. So let's try it. Let's run it now. Let me save and run. Okay, we see. Now let's check if 4 is in tuple 1, or let's say 5 in tuple 1. If 5 in tuple 1. Now this is going to be false, so we expect the if code to be skipped, as you see from the output now. So let's run it. So you see, so I think at this point you can actually get how the if statement operates. You see, if the if condition is true, the if code will be executed. If not, then the if code will be skipped. But if the if condition is true, the if code will be executed, and the execution will continue from below the if code. Just normal program flow. Now I want you to notice something. The The if code is delineated or is actually indicated in your code by the, take note of the indentation. That's the indentation from the left margin to the first statement. Now, this indentation can be of any size, but by conversion, that's what most programmers do, is actually about a tab, that's 4 space. But you can use any number of space, like I can use 1. I just want to show you it's possible. We can use 1, but it's not good to use 1. For example, look in this case, let's save it. You see, it still runs. Yeah, you can use 1, and you can let's say you, but what you have to do is all the statements or all this if code should have the same indentation. If you have any mismatch like this, it's going to generate an error. For example, in this case we have a mismatch. You can see here, you see the ID already indicates we have an error there. If you try to execute the code now, it's going to indicate an error like you see here now. So it can be of any distance. The indentation can be of any gap or distance from the left margin, but all of them must match. Now, the body of the if statements ends immediately the interpreter finds a line which has the same indentation as the if statement itself. As you can see, this print has the same indentation as the if statement itself. So the interpreter knows the if statement ends at line 18 because line 19 has the same indentation. As you can see, 0 space from the left margin. Line 19 has the same indentation from the left margin. We are going to see how this works properly when we do nested loops or nested if statements. I'm going to show you how this works. But for now, just know the body of an if statement, all statements within the body of an if statement must have the same indentation. And the end of the body is indicated by the first line, which has an indentation which is equivalent to that of the if statement. So I guess that should be, I guess you understand that. All right. All right, now let's look at the if-else statement. As you can see, the if statement just provides a piece, some lines of code that can be executed if a particular condition is true, but it says nothing if that condition is false. You see, it only handles if the condition is true, and if the condition is false, the statement is skipped. What if you have a piece of code or lines of codes you want to be executed if the condition is false before returning back to normal execution? In this case, maybe you want, if let's say 5 is in tuple 1, you want to print 5 found, else you want to print 5 not found, and you want to continue with your normal execution or your normal program execution. Now what you do is you have to use the if else statement. So here is a general flow diagram of the if else. All right, so if you can see here, the if else statement is a bit different from the if statement because we have a Boolean expression as before, or the condition expression. We have a Boolean expression which is evaluated. If it returns true, the if code is executed. Now, if it returns false, execution does not just continue from the rest of the code. It first executes a piece of else code, and before execution continues with the rest of the code. Now, if the Boolean expression is true, we have the if code executed, then the rest of the code. In the otherwise, if the Boolean expression is false, we have the else code and we have the rest of the code. So basically, you can branch between two groups of statements in this situation. You have a way to handle you have a situation where you can handle you have the ability to handle a situation where the Boolean expression is false, and you have the ability to handle a situation where the Boolean expression is true. So we are going to look at an example now. All right, you can see in the example I've added a few lines of code. As you can see, I've added line 19 to line 21 is changed. Now we have an else statement. Apart from the if statement, we now have an else statement. So the else statement has two lines of we have 2 lines of else code. We have 2 lines of code to be executed if the if statement is false. So now, what's the flow of execution? I'm going to show you now. Now, we have the first line of code is going to be executed, line 14, because there's no condition for that, just the normal flow of the program. Now, if 5 is in the tuple, that's if the conditional statement returns true, these three lines of code will be executed. That's the if code. If not, the else code will be executed, these two lines of code. Now, it can be any number of lines of code. You can have 1 million lines of code for if code or 1 million lines of code for else code. There's no limit to that, of course, but you may not have a program like that. You may want to divide your program into classes using object-oriented programming, but you can have any number of lines. It's not limited to 3 or 2 or whatever. So in this case, let's see what's going to happen. Is 5 in tuple 1. We can check manually. We don't have 5 in tuple 1, so we expect this statement to be false. Hence, we expect the else code to be executed. So let's check it. Now I'm going to run this. Now we see statement 5, 6, and execution continues from statement 7. So we see statement 5, 6, and execution continues from statement 7. What if we said, let's check in, let's say 3 in tuple 1. Let's check if 3t is. Okay, now let's check if 3 in tuple 1. Now is the string 3 in tuple 1 in do we have to, let's say set 1, let's call it set 1. Now, do we have the string 3 in set 1? Yes, let's check it out. Do we have the string 3? Yes, we have this. So this, we expect this to be true. We expect this condition to be true. Hence, we expect the if code to be executed. And once the if code is executed, the else code will not be executed. So we expect to see statement 2, 3, 4, and then statement 7. Then we have goodbye. Of course, first statement will always be printed. So let's check it out. Let's run this and check it out. Okay, you see we have first statement, statement 2, statement 3, statement 4, because the if condition was true, so the if code was executed and the else code was skipped. If the if condition is false, the if code will not be executed, rather the else code will be executed. So in this case, we have the if code executed and execution continues from this point. So I want you to see that's how the if else statement works. So now we are going to look at more interesting examples, not just print statements and all this stuff. So now let's look at more realistic examples for you to properly grasp the concept. Concept. All right. So here is another program that allows us to enter a variable. You see, line 1, we have a variable called variable. We can change the name to let's say var1. var1. Just to make it obvious, we have a variable called var1. All right, we have a variable called var1, and as you can see, we use the input function to get an input from the user. We immediately convert it to an integer because we know everything entered by the user is a string. So we immediately convert it to an integer, and we check now if the value is greater than 50. That's if this, here we have the conditional expression. If it returns true, we're going to have this 2-line executed, and the line prints out you entered var1, whatever var1 is. We are going to learn the format expression later on, the format function later on, and we have seen this before. Now we print var1 is greater than 50. Of course, var1 will be any value you enter for var1. All right, so now I'm going to execute this. After saving, I'll execute this. Now we see it actually asks for a prompt. The input statement allows the program to collect input from the keyboard. So for example, if I enter 24, press followed by enter, you see thanks, goodbye, which means these two statements were skipped. And why were they skipped? Because var1 in this case will be 24, which I entered. Is 24 greater than 50? 24 greater than 50 result false because 24 is less than 50. So this statement will be skipped and the execution will continue from here. Now let's try to add some riches, some more codes to this to see how the else statement can be used along with the if statement. All right, so I added an else clause on else statements, and an else statement, it has the else code is made up of one statement. Now let me execute this so you can see the result. All right, so I'm going to enter this case, I'm going to enter 40, and you see it said 40 is not greater than 50. That's because since the if statement was false, the if condition was false, the else statements will be executed. So as you can see, it printed var1, which should be 40 in this case, is not greater than 50. That's what we have. Let's say instead of entering 50, I entered something like 60. All right, you see, it said now the if statement will result to true because 60 is greater than 50, but indicating the if code will be executed, but the else code will be skipped and execution will continue from line 7. So as you can see, it printed enter an integer. I entered 60. It said you entered 60. This is the if code now executing, and the second line was 60 is greater than 50, and since the if statement was true, the else code will not be executed, so execution will continue from line 7, which says thanks and goodbye. So I want you to actually take note of the indentation. Notice that the if code had the same indentation from the left margin. You can see these two lines of code have the same indentation from the left margin. This gap you see here from the left margin, it's equal. Now, the F statement continues. As you can see, the F statement has the same indentation as the if statement. Now, the else statement code or the else code should have the same indentation from the left margin, no matter the number of lines you have, or should have same indentation from the left margin. You see, if you have an inconsistency in indentation, you're going to have an error. Okay, so it must be the same indentation from the left margin. Now, I want you to also note that if you have just one statement for either the if or the else code, you can place it on the same line as, let me show you. You can place it on the same line as the if or the else statement. For example, let's say this is the only line we have. We have only single lines for both code. Let's say in this case, we have only single lines for both codes. Now, look what happens. In this case, let's try to execute this. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to enter 40. Now you see 40 is not greater than 5. It worked properly. Let me say in case I put 60, you're gonna see 60. You see 60 is greater than 50. All right, so now in this case where we have just a single statement, we don't need to place it on a separate line. If we are trying to minimize the lines of code, maybe we have a lot of codes and we want to reduce the lines of the code, you can actually place it on the same line as the if statement. While this, you can place it on the same line as the else statement. If you have more than one in this case, for example, if you have more than one statement here, you need to place them on separate lines. But if not, then you can place them on the same line like this. It's still going to execute. This only works if either the if or the else code is single line of code. You understand? It doesn't work for multiple lines of code. So this will still execute. For you see, this still execute. You see, all right. So this still executes normally. So I just wanted you to also note that you can do that for single lines. Oh, there was a miss for a single line of code. This here is it. All right, it still works normally. Okay. All right, so here is a longer program that actually demonstrates more of the different operators. For example, we have the identity um, membership operator, we have the identity operator, we have the here is the it's also the membership operator, that is the inverse. Then here we have the um, logical operators, and here we have the comparison operator. So here I'm going to be showing you an example. We start with a list. It has several values. We have other variables A, B, C, and D. You can see their respective values. Now we check first if 3 in list 1 is 3 in list 1, yes. So we expect this if code to be executed. So let's try to run it first to see the output. So you see 3 is found in list 1. Now execution continues. It meets the next if statement. If A is D, remember A is going to be D because these values are the same object. So like we have seen in the previous videos with objects, Python will not create duplicate objects. It will actually point the variable D to the same object 10. So we can see it says A and D point to the same object in memory. All right, so we have another if condition A, you can use parentheses for condition just to see what you're actually doing, just to make your code look more neater. But in Python, by convention, you don't normally use parentheses, but other programming languages, parentheses is required. But in Python, it is not required, but you can use it if you're from a different programming background. So the next is, we see A is not C. A and C cannot be the same object. So A is not C is true. So this statement is going to be printed out along with this other statement, because both of them are part of the body, or the body of this if statement, or we can say the if code of this if statement. The next one, 20.5 in list 1. Does list 1 have the value 20.5? No. So this line is not going to be printed out. 20.5, 20, okay, 20.5 not in list 1. All right, so this is true because 20.5 is not in list 1, which is true. So this will be printed out. You can see it printed out here. Next, we have A greater than B, and you see you can also use logical operators to combine two Boolean values. For example, false and false, like we learned in other videos. You can watch our earlier videos. A true and true will be true, true and false will be false, false and true will be true, and false will be false, like we saw with the OR operator. So the logical OR operator and the logical AND operator. For OR, we know false or false is false, false and true, false or true is true, true or false is true, and true or true is true. So this is the logical OR operator. So for the AND, if one of these conditions is false, the overall expression is going to return false if any one of them. So it's A greater than B. Let's see, A greater than B. No. So automatically this expression is going to evaluate to false. So this will not be printed out, like you see here. It's not printed out. Now, is B less than C, or is B equal to C? Because this is a less than or equal to sign. So if it will evaluate to true if either B is less than C or B is equal to C. Let's check. B less than C. Yes, B is less than C, so it will evaluate to true. It doesn't need to check if B equals to C because B is less than C. So in this case, this will be printed out. B is less than, you can see it here. Now the next statement is A greater than D, or so if any of these expressions are true, the overall expression will evaluate to true. You can see I use parentheses just to make my work beautiful and to look clearer, my code beautiful and to look clearer. So is A greater than D? Let's check. A greater than D? No. But is A equal to D? Yeah. So in this case, even though this was false, this was true, and true or false, false or true is true. So these two lines of code will be printed out, and execution will continue from this line. So basically, that's just a longer example to demonstrate how the if statement actually works. All right, so here is another program. This program takes a line, a score from the user, that's a number. Normally, we know every input taken from the user is a string. So at this point, we convert it to a float and assign it back to the variable user input. So user input now has the float version of the string that was entered by the user. Now the program checks if the user input is greater than 50. And if it's greater than 50, the if code will be executed, these two lines of code. If not, the else code will be executed. Now, let's try an example in this case. So I will execute the program. Now 70, let's try this 70. As you can see, since 70 is greater than 50, the if code will be executed and the else code will be skipped. And remember, execution will continue where the else code ends. Remember, the else code ends when the program or the interpreter finds a line of code or a statement with an indentation equal to that of the else. You see here, this is the body, we see the same indentation, and here this is also the body of the if statement. We see same indentation. Here for the else statement, we see same indentation. So at this point, you see your score is 70, and you say good, you passed the exam, and thanks, goodbye. So you can see the else code was skipped, and execution continued from line 9. Now let's try a score which is less than 50, for example 49. Sorry, 49. Okay, let's execute the program now. All right, it's already executing. Your score is 49. Sad. Now you see, since this statement will be equals to false, because 49 is not actually greater than or equals to 50. 49 is not greater than or equals to 50. So this expression is going to evaluate to false. So the if code will be skipped and the else code will be executed. And after that, execution will continue from line 9. So we have your score is 49, this is it, and we have sad, you failed the exam. So execution continued from line 9. And like I said, take note of the indentations. As you can see, take note of the indentation for both the if code and the else code. It's always good to indent. If you don't indent properly, your compiler or Python interpreter is going to generate an error. So you must indent properly. So I think this is a very simple example to show how the if and else statements can work together to actually make some meaning in your program. Take note that if we enter 50, this statement is still going to be true because 50 is not, even though 50 is not greater than 50, but 50 is equal to 50. So 50 greater than or equal to 50 is going to evaluate to true. Let's try that. Let's say we enter 50. You see the if code was also executed because this statement will be true. User input will now be 50 and 50 is equal to 50. So we have your score is user input good, you passed the examination. So I just wanted you to also see that. Now let's look at the final example which will demonstrate multiple if-else statements. This is not nested, but I want to show you how you can use the if-else statement in some kind of a more complex application or more complex code. Alright, so as you can see from the code, we have a tuple on line 1, we have a set on line 2, we have a dictionary on line 3, we have a dictionary on line 3, and we have a string on line 4. Now we have several condition or branching statements, or like what we call them branching statements. The first one is on line 7. So as you can see on line 7, we have a branching construct I in name 1. The string I is, now we have this is a membership operator, which actually checking if the string I is in name 1. Now as you can see, the name is actually a variable which points to the string object containing the value Elliot. So if we see I is is a string within the it's a character within the string Elliot. So I in name 1 will return true. Hence, let's execute this and see. Hence, we have found I. Since the if condition is true, the if code will be executed and the else code will be skipped. Next, we have another if branching construct on line 13, which says if empire in tuple 1. Now it checks if the string empire is found into is not it's a not in tuple 1. So it checks if the string empire is not in tuple 1, and if you check tuple 1, we see it has a string empire. So empire not in tuple 1 is going to return false. Why? Because empire is in tuple 1. So what's going to happen? This statement, the if condition is going to result false. So the if code will be skipped and the else code will be executed, or the if block will be skipped and the else code will be executed. So we are going to see found empire. Here you see found empire. Next, we have another branching construct on line 19. As you can see on line 19, we have another one. It checks, in this case, it uses a logical operator to combine two Boolean expressions. So as you can see, we have 5 in tuple 1 and 5 in set 1. This is going to return, the overall return value of the expression is going to be a combination of both the left operand and the right operand. In this case, the left operand is 5 in tuple 1. Let's check, is 5 in tuple 1? Yes. So the left operand is true, and 5 in set 1 is 5 in set 1. Yes. So the right operand is true. True and true gives true, like I explained earlier. So we have, is going to return 5 is in both tuple 1. So we have 5 is in both tuple 1 and set 1. Now the next, since the if code executed, the else code is going to be skipped and execution is going to continue from the next line. And on line 25, we have another branching construct using the if statement. We said if age, the string age, remember once when you're using the membership operator with a dictionary, you're actually checking for the keys, not the values. So for example, if you say name in, if age in Dikwan, you're actually asking if there's a key called age in the dictionary. And of course, yes, there's a key age in Dikwan. Here is it, age. So it gives us true. If age in Dikwan, it's going to evaluate to true. So the if code will be executed, which will print out age is a key in Dikwan, and the else code will be skipped, and the execution will continue from the next line. So we see Elliot age is a key in Dikwan. Next, we check um if name not in set 1. Now it's going to return true if name is not in set 1. Now what is name? Name is the points to the string Elliot. Is Elliot not in dict 1? Let's see. If name not in set 1, is Elliot not in set 1? Let's see. Yes, Elliot is not in set 1. So this statement on line 31 is going to return true because the string Elliot is not in set 1. Hence, this code will be printed out. Elliot is not in set 1. As you see, we did not place any else statement here. So from there, execution continues from the next line. And on line 35, we have another complex conditional expression which uses the logical operator and to evaluate two Boolean expressions. So we see tuple 2, that's the third item. Remember the first item is 0, so the third item of tuple 1 is equal to 5. That's the condition. Is the item at the third index of tuple 1 equals to 5? Let's check. Tuple 1, 0, 1, 2. Yeah, let's say 1, 2, 3. Yeah, the third item is 5, which is true. So we have true, and tuple 1, 2 is tuple 1, 2 is 5. Is 5 in set 1? Let's check. 5 set 1. Yes. So we have true and true. And true is going to return true. Hence, the if code will be executed. So in this, while the else code will be skipped. So in this case, these two lines of code will be executed. Take note of the indentations of the if block and the else block. They must have, if you have more than one statement, like in this case, those two statements must have the same indentation. All right, I think at this point we are done for the if else statement. I hope you were able to grab some knowledge on how the if else statement work, and I hope you were able to learn a few programming methodologies. All right, see you in the next tutorials, and have a nice day. Thank you.